It's not the glow you feel when snow appears. It's not the Christmas card you've sent for years. Not the joyful sound when sleigh bells ring, or the merry songs children sing. The little gift you give on Christmas Day will not bring back the friend you've turned away. So may I suggest the secret of Christmas are not the things you do at Christmas time, but the Christmas things you do all year through.
Well, good morning. We'll have a little different service this morning. And as we always do, regardless of what service we have, we start out with prayer, communing with the presence. So I invite you to connect with that presence in a way that realizes your oneness with it. Divine Spirit. A presence that is known by so many different names. We call it forth as the activity of our awareness right now. It reminds us of who and what we really are. It is the Christ within, the Atman presence, the Buddhic mind. And as we make it the activity of our consciousness through the thoughts we have, the words we speak, the actions that we take, we activate our true nature and being everywhere that we go. We radiate this quality of the Christ presence. And so we see that in every individual. We see it within ourselves because it is the truth of who and what we are. And it is the truth that liberates us and sets us free. For this and so much more, we're grateful and thankful as we celebrate the Christ presence in our life and in our world. Amen. Well, we have a few announcements to make. That seems to never change on Sunday services. Just to remind you that we're having a candlelight service tomorrow at 5 p.m. And if you didn't come last, when was that we had that service? Wednesday. You don't want to miss it. It was phenomenal. It was spectacular. And we have caroling that begins at 4:45, so you like to come in and just sing with the group. Then we'll start the service promptly at 5 p.m. It will be special, as it always is, but this year seemed to be particularly special. The choir is spectacular. The music was over the top, and you'll never feel the same after that experience.
Yeah, it was truly amazing. And Christmas morning, we have our potluck, and it starts at 10 o'clock in the kitchen. It's very casual. You can wear your jammies. You might want to wear a robe if it's cold. And maybe some slippers. But so join us over there in the kitchen for that.
And then, of course, next Sunday, we'll have our special service of the blessing of the world religions. And like today, there'll be one service at 11 a.m., and so you'll enjoy that. It'll be, I think our chaplains are presenting that.
Oh, it's the Interfaith Ministers.
Interfaith Ministers, yes, they're chaplains too.
And then all of the rest of the information is in your bulletin. There's so much going on, so we wanted to just kind of keep it moving this morning.
And speaking of ambassadors and chaplains and other members that serve our community, I want to acknowledge our ambassadors and chaplains and any board members that are here this morning. If they would stand, they'll be present. And the ambassadors are here, of course, to answer any questions and support you in making connections, finding where the coffee is, the restrooms, and information about our classes and events. And they're wearing the rainbow ribbons. And also to answer questions that you may have are any board of trustees that are here this morning. And they're wearing purple ribbons with their name tags, and they can answer questions for you as well. And of course, our prayer chaplains are here to hold you in confidential prayer on your journeys in life. Sometimes they're up joyful journeys, sometimes they're challenges, but God is there, and they're here to help you remember that, and they're wearing the white stole. So we thank the chaplains for their service to Spiritual Life Center.
And if you're here for the very first time, in a moment we're going to ask you to stand. But first we want to talk to you about how you can find opportunities for connection here at Spiritual Life Center. If you fill out the welcome card that they will hand you, you can either put it in the offering basket or take it out to the welcome table out in the courtyard. And if you take it out there, you'll get a special gift.
So if anyone's here for the first time, any first-timers here today, just raise your hand nice and high. Any first-timers? Yes, if someone in the back and a few scattered around. All those are here for the first time. We thank the ushers who are passing out a chalet, a special gift for you. We invite you to wear that so you can get that special Spiritual Life Center welcome. And on that chalet, there's a tag that has this message for you and for all of us. And it says that we believe that we are spiritual beings who are having a human experience, and there are many paths to the one God. So we thank you for your presence, your consciousness, and your loving energy, and we appreciate that you're here with us this morning.
And so this morning, our service is different. This is a contemplative experience, and James and I are going to be talking about the true meaning or the inner meaning of Christmas. So why do we really celebrate Christmas? You know, Christians have attached this celebration of lights to the solstice celebration that's been for thousands and thousands of years. And so there's this like, well, why do we do it now and whatever? And I was telling James last year when we put this together that when I was a brand new metaphysician, I knew, well, not like I know a lot now, but I knew nothing then. And I was talking to somebody and I said, you know, it doesn't matter whether Jesus ever lived or not because it's still a true story. It is the story of us. It is the story of the human experience. The life and teachings of Jesus are a mirror to all of us. They represent the spiritual journey that each and every human being walks through. So today we're going to walk through 4 stages of Jesus' life so that we may discover a way to awaken our Christ presence. Now, as we go through these 4 stages, James will talk and then we will go into meditation. And the meditation will work like this. One of us will say an affirmation, and then we'll have a minute of silence, and then we'll say the affirmation again, another minute of silence, and then a third time. So we'll have 3 cycles of that, and then we will go into a chant, and then we will go into the next phase, just so you know what to expect. So the 4 stages will be the virgin birth, the awakening of Jesus, his spiritual formation, and then transcending the material self.
So let us begin. You know, this story begins like this. A child is born of a virgin and accompanied by a star in the east that was followed by several important men. And they followed them to a location where the newborn was raised and born. That child was later revealed to be a prodigy, then later a teacher. He was baptized or received a special anointed and started a ministry and had 12 followers. He traveled across the land and, to the amazement of his observers, seemingly performed supernatural feats. He was labeled as the truth, the light, or the anointed one. He was later betrayed by one of his followers, crucified, buried for 3 days, and then resurrected. Now, most people would recognize that story as the life of Jesus the Christ. Yet that same tale was told in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which was written about 1300 BC, meaning it existed over 1,000 years before Jesus allegedly walked the earth. Religious scholars and historians contend that the followers of Jesus sought to make him separate and apart from the rest of humanity. And they lifted him to a historical level and mythological level. One Egyptologist, Gerald Massey, studied the similarities between this Egypt mythology and the gospel stories and noted in his book in 1883, Historical Jesus, Mythical Christ, Christianity was neither original nor unique, but that the roots of much of the Judeo-Christian tradition lay in the prevailing Kemet ancient culture of the region. We are faced with the inescapable realization that if Jesus had been able to read the documents of old Egypt, he would have been amazed to find his own biography already substantially written some thousands of years previously. Joseph Campbell, the author of The Power of Myth, noted that the question is not did all these things really happen, but what do the images mean? Every mythology, every religion is true in this sense. It is a metaphorical interpretation of the human and cosmic mystery. In the Christmas story, one such metaphor is the virgin birth. It was great in its metaphysical significance. And Mary represents pure in heart and in mind. So Jesus is a representation of a divine idea, was born to one of those whose mind and heart was pure and uncorrupted by the prevailing thought forms of the day. And if we are to fulfill our spiritual potential, we must live by and be guided by divine ideas, because God only thinks in terms of divine ideas and spiritual solutions. They are expressions of the Christ consciousness. And the Christ consciousness can only be achieved or birthed when one meditates with a pure or virgin mind and heart. As it says in Matthew, the 5th chapter and 8th verse, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." We become those pure in heart through our prayer work, through our meditation and spiritual practices. And with this pure mind, we capture God's idea for our life and for our world. Each of us are pure ideas in the mind of God. And as we live that truth, we birth divine ideas. And healings begin. Upliftment happens in our world. Transformation happens as we capture and are captured by these perfect divine ideas. So let us embody the essence of the Christmas story in this meditation time. And we start with realization that we are divine ideas in the mind and in heart. We affirm that I feel infinite love and divine ideas sustaining me. When we are in tune with this truth, health and healing, divine solutions, spiritual abundance, right relationships, and divine and compelling right action are the order of our day and in our world. As we enter a time of silence, know this truth as we quietly affirm, I am a pure idea in the mind of God. Divine solutions expressed through and as me. I am a pure idea in the mind of God. Divine solutions expressed through and as me. I am a pure idea in the mind of God. Divine solutions expressed through and as me. And so it is.
Please join me in singing. God is here, God is now, God is all. God is alive within my heart. So I see and I feel and I know all is perfect and right in my world.
So we ask the question sometimes, how did Jesus awaken? Or did he even have to? You know, there are those who believe that Jesus came into this world completely aware and knowing exactly what his path was and what he was going to do. But it seems to me that if we talk about Jesus as being fully human and fully divine, then he probably had to walk through some of those steps. There were different places in the Gospels that are like watershed moments where you can see maybe a little more light coming into Jesus' thinking. And out of Luke, we find the story of the Passover story where Jesus is 12 years old, and his family went up for the festival for Passover. And when the festival was ended, they started to return. The boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a whole day's journey. Then they started to look for him among the friends and relatives. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding of the answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." And he said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand. But he went with them, and he went down into Nazareth and was obedient to his family. So in my imagination, this can go a couple of ways. Jesus was always fully awake and simply followed Jewish tradition, which says that at the age of 12, a boy becomes spiritually accountable. And so he took this opportunity at the Passover festival to start that particular path. But the passage also said that Jesus was asking questions. So he wasn't just there teaching, he was also asking and open to teaching. And everyone was amazed, though, that he understood. So he had come to this place of understanding on some level. And spiritually, the number 12 is the number of wholeness and completion. And in our context, it is the first step of spiritual maturity. It is when we understand that we must be about our Father's business, about God's business, about our spiritual path. And this is the stage where we all begin our spiritual exploration. We study, we listen, we learn, we open ourselves to Spirit. And our age 12 can come any time in our lifespan. We might be 62 and all of a sudden the age 12 thing pops up. Or it can come earlier. Our attention is taken up by the material world with what? Jobs, marriage, children, all of those different things. The opportunity is always there, but there has to come that time when we have the space and the opportunity to be able to stop and listen. And then there is that time when we start to ask questions and the answers suddenly start making sense. I'm sure some of you have experienced that. And then we are amazed. Oh, that makes so much sense. So the day comes when we turn from our parental teaching, from living from the outside in, and we come into our own temple and we make the proclamation, I must be about the business of Spirit, just as Jesus did. And so let's take this idea of moving into your own power, your own path, standing in who you came here to be, and go into it with this affirmation. I now step onto the path of divine Spirit. I am about the business of Spirit. I now step into the path of divine spirit. I am about the business of spirit. I now step onto the path of divine spirit. I am about the business of spirit. And so it is.
God is here, God is now, God is all. God is alive within my heart. So I see and I feel and I know all is perfect and right in my world.
The nature of our universe is growth. It's not static. It's continuously growing, developing, and unfolding. In the Jesus story, he did not stop growing and evolving. Once at age 12, he came to the realization that he must be about his Father's business. He uncovered his purpose at that time. He did have a spiritual awakening, but he did not stop there. You know, the story does not address what Jesus did between the ages of 12 and 30. The unknown years of Jesus, sometimes called his silent years, the lost years or missing years, generally refers to the period between his childhood and the full-fledged beginning of his ministry. It is a period not described in the New Testament of the Bible. There's reason to believe and evidence to support that he spent that time growing spiritually. Spiritual evolution is not a destination. Of course, we know it's a journey. If it were just a destination, we would need just one workshop, or we just need to read one book, or attend one seminar, or one class. It is a continuous process. You know, some scholars and historians say that between the age of 12 and 30, Jesus traveled to Egypt and went through the Great Pyramid initiation, the same initiation that Moses went through to become a high priest wizard. And part of his initiation process, he went through the death process, as well as studied the esoteric Egyptian mysteries. Then there is the accumulation of evidence that this master teacher spent part of his life in India and studied under the tutelage of spiritually advanced monks. Which part and how long, or even if it ever happened, is much debated. But one thing appears clear from the stories we do know about him. He remained open, inquisitive, and constantly asked questions. He never stopped growing spiritually. In our own life, development of our spiritual consciousness is a continuous process, often triggered by an event in our lives. Events that say, come and deal with your healing, or your relationship, or your prosperity, your peace of mind, or somehow a tragedy or loss in our life. But all of that is just a way to help us and serve as a trigger for us to grow spiritually, because we discover that it's all about expanding our spiritual awareness, our spiritual consciousness, because consciousness is continual. So we stay prayed up. We commune with the presence through our meditation. We re-examine the stories that we have been living with. We practice forgiveness. We stretch beyond our self-imposed limitations so we realize we are infinite beings. So when the challenges come, we have the tools to negotiate life from a higher point of view. So we never stop affirming. We never stop meditating. We never stop engaging in self-reflection. Because no matter how far we have come, there is something telling us in a feeling, if not in words. There is more in you. To do more, to be more, and express more of the Christ presence that is within all of us. So like the universe, we are continuously evolving. We are continuously going on our journey. And so let us take some time to go to that secret place, knowing that the quiet radiance of our inner light shines like the North Star staring the still night sky. And we affirm, I center myself in divine light. I rely on the light of understanding and intuition to guide my thoughts. In the stillness of prayer, I reflect on my inner light, knowing that I'm one with the divine of understanding. So let us go into the silence as we take in these words. God is not done with me yet. I am here to grow, develop, and reveal my best self. God is not done with me yet. I'm here to grow, develop, and reveal my best self. God is not done with me yet. I'm here to grow, develop, and reveal my best self. God is not done with me yet. I'm here to grow and develop and reveal my best self. And so it is.
God is here, God is now, God is all. God is alive within my heart. So I see and I feel and I know all is perfect and right in my world.
So if we take the story literally that Jesus had traveled abroad to study, he came back. And when he came back, he went to John the Baptizer and made a very public commitment to the spiritual path. Now, I know this hasn't ever happened to you, but immediately he made this commitment and all kinds of stuff started happening. And it says, the scripture says, he was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And I was like, I'm going to follow this spiritual path, and like, oops, here it goes. And so this was his opportunity to decide how he would use his spiritual power. And I know sometimes people think, well, God is testing me. But I think we bring this into our own, by our consciousness. It's like, I want to overcome this. This is my purpose, to overcome these things, and how better to overcome them than to experience them. So the first temptation was the devil suggested that Jesus turn stones into bread. Well, he could have had food for the rest of his life, but this is really the opportunity to gain material wealth through the use of spiritual power and to only focus it on that. And I think we know some people in our teachings, actually, who it's all about manifesting, and it all becomes about, say, money or the material things. And so in this particular instance, Jesus had the opportunity to look at this and to center his whole attention either on material supply, and he could go out and manifest things for other people. But he understood that this defeats the purpose of spiritual ministry. So in this moment, he chose not to turn the stones into bread. He chose to focus his spiritual power on the inner, not the outer. The next opportunity was to leap from a pinnacle and not be injured. And this is the opportunity to gain a following for personal glory. And we live in a time where personal glory seems to be, yeah, okay, you got it. But it was his, he could perform this huge miracle. He could jump and just walk away from it in front of a large crowd. And so that would be another way of using that spiritual power. But he chose not to use it for personal glory. And again, he said no. He turned. He said, devil, get behind me. And then the third opportunity was to actually worship the devil. And in some of us talk about devil is the word lived backwards. And it is about, the opportunity to worship personality, to live in your personal consciousness, which sometimes we call ego. And again, Jesus, he just met each temptation with a singleness of mind and of heart. He chose the high road, the high watch, each time. And simply put, it was a choice to honor the inner as opposed to the outer. You know, most of us are reluctant to release worldly interests, and in some respects, we need to have worldly interests to live in this world. And so it often feels like we are called to do two different things: live in the material world, you know, live in the spiritual world. So we come to church on Sunday and be all spiritual and then go out and live the rest of our lives. The truth is that when our consciousness expands, we can integrate the two, and this is where I believe Jesus was such a master. And it's not a simple project to release the material world. And we read the story of Jesus, we probably think how easy it might have been for him. But then he had these temptations, and there was always something running smack dab into his face, really. He was constantly running into challenges. And he had all of the everyday circumstances that we experience. There are a few people who didn't like him very much. There are a few people who liked him probably too much. Finding the balance. But the difference is that Jesus had the spiritual strength, the courage, and the conviction to keep the high watch. And that does not mean he didn't have to work at it. I mean, if you look at the gospel, I haven't gone through and counted the number of times that he went apart to pray. He was always going off, I'm going to go pray now, I'm going to go pray now. And he had so many followers, it would have been so easy for him to go into the world of personality. And one of my favorite stories is he was tired. They had been traveling and he was tired, and there was a blind man, and they said, please heal him. And he said, I'm too tired. And they begged him, and he kept saying no. Finally he said, okay. Well, it took him 3 tries. And that's the only place in the Bible where it takes more than 1 try for him to heal someone. So even then, he went against his own knowing, inner knowing, that he should just go rest, and then he'd come back and do it. But in that moment, he listened to other people. But I love to think of Jesus as a great example. He's the one who shows us the way to the divine spark. He shows us how to bring ourselves back to ourselves. And this is why we call him the bearer of light. And so as we go into this meditation, let's just think about the divine spark that is within us, that was also within Jesus, and how he taught us how to nurture that and to help it grow. And as I am the divine spark. I am the divine spark. The divine light is within me. I am the divine spark. The divine light is within me. And so it is.
God is here, God is now, God is all. God is the life within my heart. So I see and I feel and I know all is perfect and right in my world.
So to sum up, the Christmas story is not so much what may have happened 2,000 years ago or in other stories thousands of years before that. People have different perspectives on its history. But what's most important, what does it say about us here and now? We're reminded we're here to purify our minds and hearts through our spiritual practices so that we may be open and receptive to receiving the spiritual ideas of spirit. And we know that all-knowing presence of the living God only thinks in these divine solutions and divine ideas, and that we can do the same. Of course, we have a choice of whether to follow those ideas or not. But in order to choose, we must be aware, we must be awake. Because without awareness, without an awakeness, we cannot really make a choice. And of course, as the master teacher said, the highest and best choice we can be about is to be about our Father's business, which is of spirit. And to help us get there, we ask questions that move us closer to the realization of the spirit that is in our lives. Yet we realize this whole process is a journey. We evolve along the way. Just as the universe grows, our role is to continue to grow and evolve as well. Because no matter where we are, there is more of our divine potential waiting to be expressed. And then finally, we realize who we really are. We understand that we have great power. We call it the Christ presence, the God within. But as Spider-Man reminds us, with great power comes great responsibility. And we're here to go beyond using this power for only our egoic or materialistic desires, but for a higher purpose or a higher good. And the highest purpose during the Christmas time is to remind us that we're here to bring peace on earth and goodwill toward all. And as we fulfill that purpose, we anchor heaven on earth. The Christmas story reminds us that this is our mission, should we choose to accept it. Let this be the energetic we bring to Christmas this year, but every day of our lives. Peace and blessings. We now have an opportunity to take an offering now. And I invite you to prepare your gift, your tithe, your offering. And if you've given already, know that you're in the flow of divine principle that remains the same always. That we can never outgive this presence we call God. And as we give, something comes back to us in ways that we never imagined. So as the ushers are coming forward to receive our offering, let us join in together and take in these words of our offertory blessing and say them together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
May God's peace be with you. Always come shining through. May God's peace always, forever and ever, never be with you. May God's peace be with you. Always come shining through. No matter how far you may go, may God's peace always forever be with you.
bless the tithes, we bless the offerings, we bless the givers and receivers, knowing it's sending out an energy of the Christ presence that we all have, so we may anchor heaven on earth and bring forth the spirit of Christmas in our world. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Amen.
And with that, as you take this consciousness of centeredness and go out into the outside world, a lot of hectic stuff going on, remember that Christ's presence can bring you back at any moment. And with that, let us join in and say our prayer for protection to close out our service today. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, I am, and all is well. Peace and blessing to you. Have a great Christmas. See you tomorrow night for those who are going to come to the service for our...
May God's peace